for being here tonight. Again, this is Happy Cats and Healthy Birds. We are Denver Audubon. Our mission is to inspire actions. So this program again has some actions that you can take in your neighborhood that will help birds, other wildlife, and their habitats. We are an independent Audubon chapter. There are several independent chapters in Colorado, and we cover the Denver metro area. And we are separate from Audubon Rockies and Audubon Society, the National Audubon Society. We raise all of our own funds. So we appreciate you being here for our program and supporting our organization. And we do a lot of different workshops, programs, bird hikes, trainings, school programs. We do a lot of different things. And I'll share a few of those that you might want to join us for at the end of this program. And we could not do this without all of our wonderful volunteers. Julia is joining us tonight to help me take attendance. So thank you, Julia, for being here. And with that, we will have a question and answer at the end of the program. I will monitor chat. So if you think of a question and are afraid you might forget it or you don't want to speak up at the end, just type it into the chat and I will share that with our speakers today. So I would like to introduce our speakers today. Our first speaker is Erin Youngberg. Youngberg from the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies. So Erin, go ahead and take it away. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Susie. It would be really cool if my name was Youngbird. It'd be so convenient. Okay. Share my screen here. Everybody see that okay? Thumbs up. Okay, let me move these things out of the way. Great. Well, like Susie said, my name is Erin Youngberg. I work at the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, and I'm the avian ecologist and community outreach lead. One moment, I would like to turn off my camera if I can. Yeah, there we go. So I'm here today to talk to you all about happy cats and healthy birds. How do we keep our cats happy and our birds healthy? And what is our role in keeping our pets and our wildlife safe? I am not here today to say that cats are bad or that we shouldn't have cats. I want to open up a conversation and I want to share some research that you may or may not have been aware of about the effects of our cuddly friends and the effects that they're having on our equally cute and fluffy or feathery wildlife. And I also want to discuss what our role should be in this sometimes controversial issue. First, a little bit about the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies. We are a nonprofit based in the Front Range of Colorado, but we work throughout the Great Plains and the Rocky Mountains, from Canada down through Mexico. And our mission is to conserve birds and their habitats. We do this through a three-pronged approach of science, stewardship, and education, working together to advance bird conservation. Part of our commitment to conserving birds is to identify threats and causes for their decline, and then to try and raise awareness and find solutions. So I believe that today's topic falls directly within our mission to conserve birds and their habitats. A little bit about me. I grew up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, surrounded by some of the most beautiful wilderness on the planet. And it was actually a visit to a bird banding station in 7th grade, or 12th grade. No, sorry, 7th grade. I was 12 years old. We went up to Teton National Park, and there was a bird banding station, and the biologist was extracting the birds from the net, processing the bird, talking to us about migration. And if any of you have ever been to a bird banding station, you'll know there's that moment at the end when they ask, does anybody want to release the bird? And my hand shot up, and she put the bird in my hand, and it flew away. And I thought, wow, this is your job? I want that job. So I went on to pursue a wildlife degree to get a job I knew would take me outside. I wanted to work outside. I wanted to work towards conserving nature and the creatures that live there. So I found my way to Bird Conservancy in 2010 as a seasonal technician working on grassland bird nest survival, actually, up at Soapstone Prairie Natural Area, which is north of Fort Collins. So I spent my whole summer walking through the prairie, and in that picture there at the top, it's myself and my colleague doing what we call rope dragging, because the mother birds sit so close on their nests, you have to flush them off the nests to find them. They're so well hidden on the ground. So I got to walk through the prairie and find baby birds. It was lovely, and I've been there ever since. So this is my 11th year with Bird Conservancy now, and I work as the community and outreach avian ecologist. So I work within the community to raise awareness about issues affecting birds. I work with bird conservation education and bird ID classes, and then I get to do the outreach at some of our other opportunities for the public to learn about birds, like our bird banding stations. And that picture on the bottom are my two daughters, Ramona and Ophelia, at one of our bird banding stations, and I'm about to plop 2 chickadees, one in each hand, so they can release those birds and hopefully gather some of the wonder I got as a little girl. So let's talk about cats. Cats are amazing. They were domesticated in Egypt and around there in the Middle East about 10,000 years ago. They are cuddly, agile, sometimes hilarious little furry purring machines. And they do amazing things. They leap and they stalk and they climb up things and they chase feather toys and laser pointers and do all kinds of other things that display their unique cat personalities. They're like this powerful, beautiful, independent beast that lives in your home and will also curl up and purr on your lap. They're like the supreme pet. And Americans own about 90 million cats, or 1 cat for every 3 households. That makes cats more popular, pet-wise, than dogs in this country. And an expert on this topic, Dr. Pete Mara, said in a presentation that I watched recently that he would argue cats are probably America's favorite pet. I know that my family, especially my 6-year-old daughter, Ophelia, really loves our 4-month-old kitty, Bree. She will be an inside kitty. Look how much attention she gets. What cat doesn't love being snuggled and read aloud to by their humans? I love how her little kitty eyes are shut, and Ophelia is reading a book called I Can Read With My Eyes Shut. But cats are predators. And left to their own, they can reproduce really quickly, sometimes 2 to 3 litters per year. And they can wreak havoc on our wildlife. Often we love them just for that quality. You know, the hardworking barn cat that helps eliminate a mouse infestation. Cats are just doing what comes naturally to them. But there are consequences. Sometimes their deadly instincts can spell trouble for animals and the ecosystems that we value and actually that we desperately need. They can be incredibly destructive to wildlife and to people and to themselves. Cats are pets or pests, depending on what situation we allow them to be in. We, as people, domesticated them, and so we've sort of set them up in this situation, and it's become a problem, and some would say a conservation crisis that needs our attention. The first task in trying to solve this problem is to figure out exactly how many cats are in the United States. And some recent studies have put together their very best estimates. I mentioned earlier that Americans own about 90 million cats. And by owned cats, I mean cats that have a home, they live indoors most of the time, they're fed indoors, they have a family, but about 2/3 of those cats are allowed outside. So that's about 60 million owned cats then that are out on the landscape. Then there's an additional roughly 60 to 100 million unowned cats. And by unowned, I mean they do not have a home that they go into. They roam around outside all the time, but they still rely on humans, and they're often fed in cat colonies, and often those are the trap, neuter, release, or a TNR population, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But that means there's at least 120 million cats on the landscape at any one point in time, and that's at the very least. That doesn't take into account the feral cat population, and feral cats are cats that are completely wild, that do not depend on humans to feed them, and we do not have a good mechanism to monitor that population. We need a great cat count of some kind, much like we do a great birding count. And some places are already doing that. I know in Washington, D.C., they're doing some cat counts by putting the camera traps in the city parks. So there are ways. But in this way, the cats have become an invasive species. That means that they're an introduced species that's not native to this environment. Much like the Burmese python has been to southern Florida, especially the same as unwanted pets that people dump into nature. They wreak havoc on the wildlife down in the Everglades. The same with feral hogs in Texas. Those animals have escaped now into the environment, and they destroy crops, and they wreak havoc on the wildlife there as well. So both of those are examples of invasive species. So now that we have an estimate of how many cats are outside, what do they do when they're out there? Scientists have been working to get a handle on how big that problem really is, and university researchers in Athens, Georgia, outfitted 60 pet kitty cats with little 3-ounce video cameras. That's that blue rectangle attached to the cat collar there. Those video cameras were provided by National Geographic, and they wanted to figure out what the heck the cats do all day when they're turned loose out into the suburban wild. So between November 2010 and October 2011, so almost a whole year, the kitty cams captured more than 2,000 hours of cat activity when they're outside the home. And it revealed that our furry purring machines are likely killing a lot more critters than the precious gifts they might leave for you on the doorstep. The kitty cams showed us that cats actually bring back about 1/3 of what they actually kill. Almost half of their victims are left at the kill site, and then the rest becomes kitty snacks. And this is all prey items, not just birds. There was also a cat tracker project that aimed to find out where exactly the pet cats go when they're outside. So there were some researchers that tackled this question by putting little GPS trackers on a harness on nearly 1,000 cats across 4 countries for a week to shed light on how far their house cats ranged and where did they go. It turns out that most cat owners did not know exactly where their cats go or how far they wandered. And so I would like to show a video here for you. It's loading up. So this is from that National Geographic study.
He should acclimate to rather quickly. He might walk a little drunkenly at first, but if a couple days go by or...
Cats are really unique because they're the only pets we have that we just give free license to roam wherever they want if we let them outside. People who've said that they want to track their cats think they know generally where their cats go, and it seems that most of the time they're not right about where their cat goes.
Cat Tracker is a project we started because we wanted to know where these cats went. Cats are known globally as a big threat to conservation because they kill so many animals. But in the United States, there are a lot of predators running around. So we wanted to know how far are these cats going into the natural areas, and are they actually a threat to our native wildlife that lives there?
Oh, so without the whole...
We're working initially in the North Carolina area where we have tracker units, and we're loaning them out to people to put on their cats for a week or two at a time.
Sorry, guys.
So far, most of the animals are staying pretty close to home, but certainly they are making some side trips. They're visiting other houses, which is pretty interesting, so we're starting to wonder, what's luring them, and some of them are starting to go into some of the natural areas around their houses as well.
Frozen? Oh, see, the kind of drunk staggery walk? Yeah.
It's important to know, is it 10% of the cats that move a long way, or is it 1%, or is it 0.1%? Because we start dealing with the billions and billions of cats that are out there. If it's 1%, that could still be a lot that are hunting.
When people find out where their cats have gone, they generally react with a lot of shock to see where Fluffy Pants went. And they almost feel betrayed or shocked. Their responses are always like, oh my goodness, I am going to have to talk to that cat.
We're also starting to find some interesting details in the story of these cats. We had one cat where it stayed home all the time. Then all of a sudden, it went to a house and then came back. And we thought, well, what is this? Is it GPS error or something like that?
She's like, my body's betraying me.
Turns out they were out of town that weekend, and the house that it went to is where they used to live. It somehow remembered where it used to live. It knew how to get there, even though it had to cross a busy street. It's kind of risky, actually. Well, so this one example tells us that cats have long-term spatial memory and that they can navigate around in this area even if 99% of the time they're only in their backyards. What we want to do is really crowdsource this, take this into the world of citizen science, so it's not just a few scientists tracking a handful of animals, but hundreds of volunteers tracking hopefully thousands of cats. We generally advocate that people keep their cats indoors. But if you do let your cat out, we just want to know where are they going and try to understand some of the biological phenomenon so that we can help in the future minimize the impact of cats on wildlife.
Possible.
Okay, sorry about that there for a second. I think you guys missed some of the video, but I'm glad you could hear what he said. And like he said in the video, most cats do stay pretty close to home with a foray every now and again. And hopefully with more data that's collected, we'll understand more about the movements of cats. But also those ones that stay close to home, if they're hunting there in a restricted area, the cats can have sort of an outsized effect on local populations. And considering the big number of cats, remember there's over 120 million in the United States at any one time, those local impacts can then add up to a larger overall impact. There was a study published in Nature Communications that estimated that cats kill between 1.3 billion, and that's on the low end based on a very conservative population of 30 million cats, which we know is probably much greater than that, and then 4 billion birds a year on the upper end of that graph. So that's a median of 2.4 billion birds per year. It's probably more realistic that there are more cats on the landscape than we know, and that they probably kill more than that a week. So 2.4 billion a year is a relatively conservative number, unfortunately. And then also free-roaming cats in the United States also have a large impact on mammal reptile and amphibian populations. There's consistent evidence that predation of mammals are more preferred than any other taxa, so not just birds. The estimate of mammal mortality is 200 mammals per cat per year. That comes out to a median of 12.3 billion mammals lost per year. Wow, that's a lot. Our native fauna cannot sustain that kind of mortality. It's also proven that your cat is just safer inside. Indoor cats live almost twice as long as cats that go outside. And outside, they can encounter several dangers. Cars and traffic, like that gentleman mentioned in the video, crossing a busy road is risky. They can encounter other cats and have hostile interactions. They can succumb to diseases and injuries, perhaps resulting from some of those interactions. And there's also interactions with wildlife, potentially, especially here in Colorado, with coyotes. And bird people know, too, that a large raptor probably would look at a small cat as a prey item. So all of this evidence is just pointing to the fact that it is much safer to keep our cats inside. It's safer for the wildlife, and it's safer for them. One disease that persists because of outdoor cats is toxoplasmosis. Cats are the definitive host for that parasite Toxoplasma gondii, which causes toxoplasmosis. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I did want to mention it just so people are aware of it. Cats shed the parasite as an oocyst in their feces, which can persist for months in soil and in water, thereby enhancing the probability of transmission to an intermediate host, such as a rodent or livestock, or our kids in the sandboxes, because we know where cats like to poop, or even mom in the garden. There's implications for human health once infected, and you can get infected either by eating infected meat or drinking infected water, inhaling the oocyst spores, or direct transmission from infected sand or soil. So some of these implications are blindness, miscarriage. My midwife definitely told me not to clean the litter box when I was pregnant, because also if I got infected, it's possible the fetus could have developmental problems. Toxoplasmosis has also been linked to memory loss and in some cases even schizophrenia. This parasite is more likely to persist in the feral cat populations or where large groups of cats congregate, such as feeding stations. So you can imagine that this could become a much larger health problem the longer cats are allowed to roam freely outside. And the most common forms of congregating cats or feeding stations are the trap, neuter, release, or return, TNR, populations of unowned and feral cats. So TNR is a technique where volunteers catch feral and unowned cats and they neuter them, and a lot of times they also vaccinate them, and then they re-release them into the parks, neighborhoods, the city streets, or even the open spaces and wilderness, and then they feed them. The idea is that by spaying and neutering all of the cats, the colony will diminish over time and eventually disappear. And you can tell that a cat has been trapped and neutered because they clip off the top of one ear. So you can see in that picture at the top that the two cats in the middle have the clipped ear, but the other two cats don't. So unfortunately, some studies have shown that this TNR technique just doesn't work as well as it's intended to. It's really difficult to trap and neuter all of the cats as there's constant immigration of new individuals. There's no mechanism set up to monitor that population or their populations across the country. The colonies also unfortunately become attractive as a dumping ground for people looking to abandon their unwanted pet. They see that group of cats and they think, great, my cat will have some cat friends. And so they do become an attractant for that. And as a result, those colonies remain and they'll often grow larger. Many of the stations also attract unintended visitors, such as raccoons, that bring and spread diseases like rabies. It also leaves cats on the landscape, thus not fully addressing the fundamental problem of their impact on wildlife. TNR is a noble effort, and it's one that is led out of compassion for the cats as an alternative to euthanasia, but some studies have shown that it is simply not working. So what is our moral responsibility here? Given everything we know now about this problem, we have to ask ourselves, should we let cats persist outdoors, despite the consequences that they have for themselves and for wildlife? Do we remove one species to save another? Wildlife managers are often faced with these kinds of decisions when they manage for wildlife populations in our national parks and forests. I'm certainly not proposing any answers to these questions today, and I'm certainly not asking you all to answer them either. I'm just hoping all of us as stewards of nature and our wildlife to consider these tough questions. It's definitely not easy, and there's not one particular solution that's going to make everybody happy and solve this issue. Definitely not right away. It's going to take some time. And I tell you all of these things, and I fully acknowledge that humans are the largest cause of all animal mortality. And upon looking at all the human-related causes to bird mortality, ecologists have found that cats are indeed the biggest threat. In both the US and Canada, cat predation surpasses collisions with our windows, our cars, and our other man-made structures like our power lines, communication towers, wind turbines, and other activities like chemicals in the environment. So this looks like a problem we can do something about. The cat is the low-hanging fruit, if you will, that could really make a difference if we address it. Getting our outdoor cat populations under control would have the single greatest effect on helping our declining bird populations in this country. And actually not just this country, it is a problem in Australia, it is a problem in Japan, it is a problem in Europe and Canada also. Cats may very well be the silent spring of our time. For those who remember Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, where she rang the alarm bells about DDT in the environment, prohibiting birds from successfully laying eggs. And once we identified that threat and removed DDT from the environment, the California condor came back, the bald eagle came back. I can't imagine a world without bald eagles, but that just goes to show that there is success stories. Once a threat is identified and we do something about it, that the birds will flourish. So why are we concerned? Why is this a problem for birds? Well, as most of you all know, we need birds. Birds don't just twitter around pointlessly. They pollinate plants, they spread seeds, control insects, and they provide several economic and health benefits. Birds are the glue that binds healthy ecosystems together. I think that's why we all love them. Birds are critical to our survival. They matter. Their healthy habitat supports clean air and water for us. Protecting open spaces for that habitat can boost property values. And we know that people spend quite a bit of their time and their money on bird watching and bird feeding. It's not a cheap hobby, binoculars and airplane tickets to go and see birds. It's a huge economic boost. And experiencing birds in nature and all wildlife in nature, it regulates our mood, it calms us down, and it improves our mental and physical health. There was a big study that came out last year about the 3 billion birds that we have permanently lost here in North America in the past 50 years. And Bird Conservancy was part of collecting and analyzing that data that contributed to that publication. And some of you may know my colleague Arvind Punjabi, and he's done some talks all about that paper. And we saw that grassland birds were the group that had been the most affected, but several species have been lost or have lost between 50 to 90% of their global populations since 1970. This is literally our canary in the coal mine. Species are disappearing before our eyes, hence the call to action. 1 in 4 birds are gone forever. So there's multiple factors contributing to these bird losses. Some are more complex than others. Habitat loss, chemicals in the environment, obstacles, pollutants. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. And what else came out of that publication were some calls to action that Susie mentioned at the beginning, that every citizen can do to help stop this massive loss of our continent's birds. The first one is to make your windows safer. Birds cannot see glass. So you can make your windows safer in your homes and your offices by treating them with bird-safe window treatments that break up the reflections, like decals, films, paint, or even strings that hang down so the birds can see the glass. Number 2, to keep your cats inside is one of the calls to action for the simple seven simple actions. And that's what we were talking about here today. The third thing is to plant native plants in your yard, flowers that attract pollinators, and trees or shrubs that create places for birds to nest. And if you're going to attract birds to your yard, it's just another good reason to keep your cats inside. The fourth thing you can do is to avoid using pesticides. Many birds eat insects, and if those bugs get poisoned, so do the birds, or they feed those poisoned insects to their nestlings. The fifth thing, it's small, but you can drink shade-grown coffee. I like coffee. The shade-grown coffee means it preserves the forest, which benefits all forest species. A lot of our birds that breed here in North America migrate south to winter in those forests in the tropic zones where they grow the coffee beans. The sixth thing we can do is to reduce our use of plastic. Use a reusable water bottle, canvas bags. Plastics are polluting our oceans and our other environments. Birds try to ingest it, they're getting tangled in it, or they try to feed it to their young. And the last thing you can do is to contribute to science by helping collect bird data. Monitoring birds helps to catch those regional, local, and national bird declines that we've seen and alerts the scientists. So I ask you to consider what you can do in your lives and in your homes to contribute to bringing our birds back. And a lot of resources can be found at those 2 websites at the bottom there, the 3billionbirds.org and abcbirds.org. So back to what we can do about our cats besides just keeping them indoors. People seem to perceive cats as part wild and thus may be able to get along on their own. But cats do need human care. At the same time, the native animals that they inevitably prey upon also need our help. We need to work to reduce the cat overpopulation, and it's going to take concerted effort by a great number of people. The pet owners of the world, our representatives and leaders, and each of us. What can we do to educate our friends and families and neighbors? This is a list provided by the American Bird Conservancy about some things you can do. You can support local cat control and protection plans that remove feral cats from the environment. You can oppose legislation permitting the TNR programs in cat colony feeding stations. Alternatively, you can support legislation that requires cat owners to register their cats and prevent them from roaming free outside. Do not feed unknown or feral cats without some kind of commitment to helping them find permanent and loving homes. And never abandon an unwanted cat. Instead, take them to a shelter, or you can find an organization that will foster them or help adopt them into a lifelong home. So there's other solutions too. I think that it's time we started treating our cats like we treat our dogs. There was a time when dogs were allowed to roam freely in this country, but they became a problem when they formed packs and they started biting people and they started spreading rabies and getting hit by cars. And I do think this problem was bigger on the East Coast, more so than out west here. But then they passed laws that mandated licenses and vaccinations, and they made it illegal for dogs to roam free. But more importantly, that all led to a change in attitude about how people cared for and took responsibility for their dogs. Dogs were then walked on a leash or kept within a fenced yard. Animal control officers removed unknown animals from the streets, animals from the streets. Dogs that were unhealthy or could not be placed in a caring home were euthanized, an unfortunate outcome, but one that many animal ethicists would argue is more humane than allowing a dog to starve, die of disease, or to be hit by a car. I think we need to similarly shift our thinking about cats. If we fail to do so, it seems unfair to a species that is dependent upon humans. I think it's time that we value our pet cats like we value our pet dogs. We often don't think twice about stopping our car or trying to catch a loose dog when we see one, but I don't think the same is true for cats. So it's time to extend the same value to our pet cats. So what can you do? My cat wants to go outside. Or how can you transition your outdoor cat to be an indoor cat? If you want to enrich your cat's life and take them outdoors, there are options. Many cats can be trained to wear a harness and even enjoy going for walks with their humans. Or if you need to move a little quicker, like if it's an aerobic thing and the cat on the leash can't really keep up, there's pet strollers for small dogs and cats that will allow you to move faster or through crowded parks and keep your cat safe in the pet stroller. I think it's time we normalize that because we don't see very many people take their cats outdoors like this, and I think it's great. And before we started this, actually Sky mentioned something about other solutions for people who have cats outdoors, and I realized I didn't put any like the cat bib or the bells on cats that go outdoors, but I do want to say that those also are not proven to work. So I didn't even put them in this presentation, but I'm happy to talk more about it afterwards if people want to. But there's also features that you can add to your house, just like a dog run or a chicken coop and a chicken run for those of you that have chickens. You can create a safe outdoor space for your cat. If you don't have the yard space or a deck or patio to convert for that, there's window boxes sort of built up onto the window, and you can build a little pet door so the cat can come outside and lay in the sun whenever it wants and enjoy the fresh air. Or you can check out the really cool option of a catio, and you can enclose an existing patio or build a new one. And lucky for us, we have someone today who can speak to us directly about that after this presentation. We have Sky from Cat Topia here, and I'm excited about that. Birds deserve our protection. They cannot protect themselves. I really believe in our ability to create solutions that will work for our birds and for our cats. I'm happy to share any and all of the resources cited or used to make this presentation, or send anyone more information if you're interested. Just shoot me an email. That's up at the top left. It's erin.youngberg@birdconservancy.org. And you can read more about the issue on our website or the other two that I mentioned earlier, the ABC birds and the 3 billion birds. There's also a couple of books that delve even deeper into the subject if you want to learn more. The Among the Pigeons book is actually about the outdoor cats in Australia. And then Pete Mara's recent book called Cat Wars. There's so many ways that we can keep our cats happy as indoor cats and our birds healthy where they live outdoors. And I want to thank you all very much for listening and engaging and spending your time here with me today. I know you probably could have watched the latest episode of The Crown on Netflix, but you chose to log in today, and I really appreciate that. I want to thank the Denver Audubon for inviting me to speak, and I think Sky and I would both be happy to take your questions at the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Erin. So I would like to go ahead and introduce Sky from Cat Topia. It, I believe, started here in Denver and is now spreading across the nation. So Sky, go ahead and tell us about catios as a possible solution.
Hey everyone, yeah, so I'm Sky Davis, the owner and founder of Cat Topia. We did get our start here in Denver, Colorado. This is our third year in business. So I grew up here in Colorado. If you're not familiar with the area, I'm from Boulder, so right on the foothills. And growing up, we always had cats. Definitely a big cat guy and pet lover, animal lover in general. So the way that I came up with starting the business was because we always had outdoor cats, and growing up in the foothills of Boulder probably wasn't the best idea because we would lose cats. I have one actually pretty vivid experience with my favorite cat named Chai. He got picked off by we believe a large owl, and so there's definitely a danger for your cats to be outside, and we just found that it was a huge benefit to not only protect your cat but to protect the wildlife and especially the birds. A huge statistic, 2.4 billion birds. That's just crazy, and I'm sure like Erin said, that's not even close to what the numbers actually are. So we got our start here. We now build across the country, and we are really making it our goal and our mission to just have all pet owner or cat owners in particular, just when they get a cat, they either build a catio or they build a window area for the cat to go outside, because we do find that it is important for cats to be able to go outside. It helps, keep them in good shape, to keep them healthy, to stimulate them mentally. But the counter, the other side of letting them out is just, it's not worth it. So the ability to let them go outside in a safe space is just really a huge benefit, with cats being kind of, in the grand scheme of things, recently domesticated. They can be difficult to train to stay inside, or get a little testy and try to run out the back door, or really meow in your face when you're trying to sleep, or whatever it might be. There's a lot of ways that they let you know that they want to go out, but it's your responsibility as the pet's owner to make sure that they're staying safe, and in turn keeping the bird population and the wildlife around your area safe. So as we move forward, we have made it our goal and mission to not only protect cats, but to protect local wildlife. So we've gotten involved with shelters. We donate a portion of our revenue to animal shelters in the local area of wherever we're doing our jobs, because it is maybe not the best solution ever, but the trap and release and neuter, it's got to help, versus just letting cats reproduce and repopulate, because they will just run rampant otherwise. there's got to be other ways that we can get involved to further benefit the bird population and reduce the amount of stray and feral cats. So that's how we've been trying to get involved, is to just donate our time, our money, our audience, whatever we can do to just get the word out that this is important, and it's something that we can't just let continue to happen. And so we've really tried to make it a point to educate people that catios are an option, that they are a very viable option, because even if you have an outdoor cat that is already introduced to the outdoors, is quite difficult. I saw a question on here about how to reintegrate a cat that's been previously outdoors. It can be difficult to do, to fully bring them back in. However, with catio, it kind of gives them the best of both, where they still have their freedom and their independence to go in and out as they please, but you can make sure that it's in a safe space that isn't going to allow them to hurt themselves, isn't going to allow them to hurt birds or other wildlife, and it'll give you peace of mind that you're doing the best thing you can for your pets, because we love them, they're the best. So that's kind of how we build ours. Is you can see on these, we have a bunch of different sizes, styles. Kind of the way that we build ours are just based on the homeowner. We do most of our jobs custom, so that it's whatever the size, shape, or variabilities that they need to fit onto their home, we accommodate those. Like any kind of home edition project, you can get a fairly reasonably priced one, or you can get a massive tunnel system like this. This runs along the whole side of one of our customers' houses. It's super fun to build. But if you're also kind of handy, you can usually put them together yourself. There's a lot of DIY stuff. We've got a couple of really in-depth DIY instructions where you can get all the materials. It shows you exactly how to build it, or you can always call us. I'm happy to chat with you if you are interested in getting one built, even if you just want some advice as to where to put it, or if it's something you'd want to take on your own. I'm around. I love chatting about it and coming up with fun ideas. They're definitely a good time to build. It's kind of like just building a little play area. They got little shelves they can jump up on and keep them entertained, and we'll add trees and feathers, and people will put bird feeders close by so that they have something to look at, but they're not going to get the birds. And there's a ton of fun stuff that you can do with them to make them personalized, put chairs out there, put plants on them, just really make it however you want. And another huge benefit is putting the litter box outside. Really nice. Don't have the smell inside. Makes a huge difference. But yeah, I think it's definitely a huge misunderstanding that you need to let your cat outside. I think that a lot of cat owners just fall into that pattern. Like Erin was saying, it seems to be that people feel inclined to let their cats outside, and they do want to be outside as well. Having only domesticated them, we technically domesticated them 10,000 years ago, but that was more so for the purpose of just killing the vermin and whatever might be messing with our food supply or infecting the water, whatever that might be. That was kind of the reason we domesticated them. So it's sort of fitting that they are out, unfortunately killing the wildlife, but we are kind of past that. It doesn't need to be the way that it is anymore. And so that's really our mission, and our goal is to not only protect the cats and people's pets, because it is, anytime that you let your pet outside, you are taking a risk. When you let them out, it's very it's unlikely that they'll have a long happy life, and you run the risk of them maybe not coming back at all. And then in the meantime, they are going to be out there killing birds, killing mice, killing rodents. It's just kind of inevitable. It's in their nature. And so it's really our responsibility to make sure that we are being good pet owners and taking care of our, beloved animals, as well as taking care of the bird population and the wildlife in the area to make sure that we can preserve that for the next generation. And I really appreciate you guys. Let me talk. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have. And I appreciate the time.
Great, thank you so much, Sky. Erin, did you have a response to that before I dive into our first question?
No, I think that is a really, really great option, like Sky said, for reintroducing what might be an outdoor cat to be an indoor cat. It's like such a great mix of both. They still get the outside because they do like to be outside. Absolutely. And I think it's awesome. It's cool that you can customize it, that you can build it as a deck that you can even sit in, just like an extra room in your house. So I think that's really great.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Makes it so you can't not have one. They'll fit on any house. You just gotta get a little creative with it.
Yeah.
It's like you get a dog, you usually build a fence for them. You get a cat, you should get a catio for them. It's what we're trying to do to kind of flip the script on things.
Yeah. It's just a mindset change.
Yeah.
And it takes time.
It does, and it will. But
one of our first questions was, how is it possible to train an outdoor cat to be an indoor cat? I know catio is one solution to help with that. My cats, once I had a catio built and they knew which window led to the outdoors, they quit even asking to go out at the other doors and trying to escape the house. So they do learn which window lets them into the catio. But are there other tips from Erin and Sky? Any other tips on how to train an outdoor cat to become an indoor cat? I know you've addressed it a little bit, but if you have some additional information, that'd be great.
Not besides trying to train them for a leash or harness. And I know not all cats are keen for that. But if you just put the harness on them and let them wander around the house with it on, so they get used to it on their body, and then a leash and take them outside that clips onto it. I like the harness better than like the collar because it just it supports the body better when they pull on it. I would try that, but no, I think the catio is probably the best intermediate training device.
Yeah, and in my experience, definitely once the cat's been outside, it's the phrase, it's hard to put the cat back in the bag. It's I'm sure it's possible. It would just be more resilience on your side, I think, more than anything, because they will, like the video that we saw, they're super smart and they've got incredible memory. So it seems like once they've known the outdoors and they know that that's there, they kind of seek that out. And so I think eventually they would probably give up if you just were super adamant about like, no, you're not going outside. And just kind of nurture them with love, make sure they're getting a lot of exercise. Maybe you got to play with them more, bring out the laser, add some shelves inside, whatever you got to do there would definitely help as well. Just kind of stimulate them, add different features. So maybe you got to build a new cat tree, or there's some different stuff you do there as well. But I think it would probably be more just resilience and kind of putting your foot down that like, no, you're not going outside anymore would be probably your best option.
Yeah, those are great suggestions, Sky. Adding more things in your home to entertain. That's a good suggestion for sure.
Thank you. And then we had a question about Bird Conservancy of the Rockies specifically. So what does Bird Conservancy of the Rockies feel is a viable alternative to trap, neuter, and release, since feral cats are not adoptable?
Yeah, I don't think Bird Conservancy has an official statement or position on that. What I presented today is just what's been recommended by American Bird Conservancy and Wildlife Society, and a couple of other studies that have come out. So I don't think we have an official position on that I can speak to.
Thank you. And Denver Audubon does have an official statement. It supports keeping cats indoors. Doesn't really take a position on the trap neuter release other than to acknowledge that yeah, it's challenging and it doesn't always work in terms of, once you have a neutered population, as cats expire or leave, new cats come in that still need the neutering. So it's definitely a challenging position to figure out what to do with the cats that sometimes are still cared for, even if they are feral. We love watching birds, and some people love watching their feral cats. So yeah, it's a really challenging thing to think about what we can do
It
for our
is.
cats and for our wildlife.
Yeah. And one thing I learned when I watched Pete Mara's, um, he did a talk about this in 2016. And so I watched that whole presentation to just sort of guide me about this one. During his Q&A, he got asked about the same thing. And he recommended that the TNR is not going away, and it can be used as a tool. And he would recommend, he's with the Smithsonian Conservation Institute in DC, that we focus on those populations that are closer to areas of concern. So I guess there's areas like in Jones Beach where the piping plover is an endangered bird that's being affected by cats. So to try and control that population, the populations that are closest to are like open spaces of concern or near birds that are endangered, like breeding areas. So smaller, more localized efforts instead of trying to across the country address TNR, because that's really difficult. Absolutely. So I think in the more localized, high priority areas is the best place to start.
Erin, did you say which issue of National Geographic the study was reported in, or the title of the article?
I think it was 2013.
Okay, and for everybody's sake, I will gather all of the websites that we mention. I can get a link to the article that Erin mentioned, and I will be sending that out after this program so that you have those resources to refer back to as well.
Yeah, the Kitty Cam one was from Athens, out of Athens, Georgia, a university, and that was 2010 and 11, I believe.
Some other good suggestions, there's been some good chat conversations going on while the presentations have been happening, and a couple of things that are of interest that I think are really significant to say out loud is that, this is really largely a cultural problem that so many cat owners think their cats need to go outdoors to be happy. This is from Jennifer. Many responsible cat owners with outdoor living cats have catios or secure enclosures or secure locations so that both the cats and birds can be safe. And she also suggested that maybe in the same way that many apartment complexes now have dog play areas, that they could perhaps start creating some cat play areas for the apartment living. Since there are so many apartments that may allow cats that don't allow dogs, that would be a great solution for those. I just thought that was a really great solution to bring up to the whole group.
Yeah.
If you do have a question, you're welcome to unmute yourself and go ahead and pose that. I'm going to look back through the chat and make sure I didn't miss any questions. But from everybody who's here, just unmute and speak up. So we do have a bird-related question, which is having a hard time attracting birds to the feeders, and how to and what tips we have on that. Do you want to start, Erin?
Sure. I am not a feeder expert, believe it or not. But I know Wild Birds Unlimited has a lot of resources for that too. But make sure you put your feeder in a place where the birds feel safe to access it. So if there's a tree or a shrub nearby that they might be able to escape to if they feel threatened, like if there's a Cooper's hawk that comes in the yard or cat. And then you can get different seed blends. And I think consistency is the key. So leaving your feeder in the same place, it takes the birds a little while to find it. and then refill it, because once you let it go empty, if you leave it empty, then they'll kind of give up and they'll move on. So you have to keep it fed and put it in a place where they feel safe.
Thank you. I would agree with everything you just said. Don't really have anything to add. Another thing that does attract birds to your yard is a water source, especially in Colorado. So to have a bird bath that you just put a little water in daily when it's cold, you can also, there's some fairly affordable heating devices that you can put into the water baths that heat it just enough to keep it thawed, but doesn't warm the water. The water stays cool, which is important for the birds because you don't want warm water during the winter months. So having a water source, and also making sure that when you are doing landscaping that you incorporate native plants, because even the birds that eat the seed, that is not, for most birds, that's a supplemental food source. There's a few types of birds like our finches who are primarily seed eaters, but the chickadees, the nuthatches, the woodpeckers, their primary source of food, especially during breeding and nesting season, is insects. And having native plant sources that they recognize as being a place to go for seed, for fruit, and for insects is going to be helpful in attracting those birds to your yard as well. So think about all aspects of the bird's life and not just the feeding portion.
Yeah, great suggestion about planting natives flowers. I would also recommend just noticing what birds are in your neighborhood, yeah, and cater the feeding source to that. So if you have a lot of finches, the seed feeder would be great. If you have more nuthatches, you could get a suet feeder because they enjoy that too.
Exactly. So another question for Denver Audubon specifically is, are we making cats a project for Denver Audubon? What we are looking at moving forward, we're actually in the middle of a conservation stewardship planning process right now. And we're looking at creating bird-friendly urban habitats. Since most of our territory is in developed areas, neighborhoods, business areas, we're looking at all aspects of what can we do to make a urban area have bird-friendly habitat available to the birds that we have near us. So while cats specifically is not a program area that we're going to be focusing on, it is definitely part of the larger making Denver and making urban habitats bird-friendly. Great question.
Yeah.
I don't see any other questions. If I missed a question, please unmute yourself. If you keep your video off, your name and your face will not appear, only your voice. But please go ahead and unmute yourself for any further discussion or questions that you might have at this time. So I will have a copy of the chat. What I might do after the program, in addition to sending you the links that we have, sending you a link to the recording so that you can share this with additional friends and family members who missed being here tonight. I will go through the chat and just kind of put together some of the suggestions, the great suggestions that we had from the chat, and share that with everybody as well. So if there are no further questions, I just wanted to thank everybody once again for being here. Let me share just a couple more things with you. We do have some additional programs coming up. We have a few bird walk field trips that are just starting to come back up again with the pandemic numbers going back down again. We're looking at hosting a few bird walk field trips. They are free. They're located throughout the metro area. Right now, I think we only have about 1 or 2 per month, and you do need to register in advance for those because we are keeping the numbers very, very small. We also have if you are a big birder, we have 25 Colorado Front Range trails that will make you a better birder. So for those of you venturing into the birding world, you can check that program out. We also have 2 more programs in the Conservation in Colorado series that directly address those 7 simple actions to protect birds. The next one in March is making our buildings bird friendly in Denver, looking at building and window stripes. And then we are discussing pesticides and how pesticides affect birds in April. Because it's not just the reduction in insect population, there's more studies coming out about the direct effects of pesticides on birds and their ability to migrate and their health and wellness. So please, you can find those at our website. I will share our website as well as Bird Conservancy's website with you, so you can check out their programs. Any interesting programs coming up of interest, Erin?
Gosh, I should have looked at our calendar.
No
I'm not
worries, I'll share it.
we have an events calendar, but I wanted to ask you, who's doing the Making Buildings Safer talk?
So the Making Buildings Birds Safe, our primary speaker is the former Denver Lights Out intern. So he's going to be talking about buildings and light pollution and how to make those safer. Plus we have Brian Lentz from the American Bird Conservancy, who will be joining us on that program as well. And he is like the premier window strike, knows everything about it. So those are the 2 individuals. And then for pesticides, we do have Margaret Eng. She is one of the researchers for some of the studies on how pesticides affect birds. And then the People and Pollinators Network will be joining us to talk about what's happening in Colorado with pesticides as well. So yeah, so we've got some interesting speakers coming up. Great question. If you do want more information on our programs, please go to our websites, both Bird Conservancy and Denver Audubon, to join our email communications. If you are able, supporting us financially is always welcome, so that we can provide programs like this to the public for free. And I, again, just want to thank everybody for being here and joining us for tonight's program. I will leave it open for a few moments in case we do have a couple more questions, but other than that, have a great night and we hope to see you at a future program.